America, we're going to try this one more time. And today, once again, I'm talking to you about public safety. Public safety. And this is important because the budget of Athens-Clarke County, where I'm doing this show from, and I suspect your budget too, whether in Richmond, Virginia, or St. Louis, or New York, over half the county budget goes to public safety if you add in the judiciary, which includes the sheriff's office and the jail and all that stuff. So, public safety budgets. The question is, are these budgets organized to secure African-American males, for example, or are they organized to secure people from African-American males? That's the question, and that's a problem. And I think that's important because I think this discourse about we need to protect women and children, we need to protect the women and children, we need to protect women and children actually gets weaponized against black communities. This is especially important because there's a slew of recent studies that have come out that have said that as the black male goes, so goes the black community, which means black women and white women are pretty much, if you adjust for education, they ride equally in America until they get attached to people. And if white women get attached to a white male, they get a balloon up. And if black women get attached to a black male, they get an anchor down. So, what is it like to be the target? And this is what it means. That dynamic is what explains, for example, this dynamic. Now, my partner is... That dynamic explains this dynamic. You will not get... And I'll make this bigger. You will not get... parity in America, and just to be clear, that white line that's median incomes, and they're rising for white. The blue line is median incomes, and those are rising for white American households. And the red line are median wealth. This is actually a median wealth, not income, wealth, which is actually more important than income. This is wealth. Those are median wealths, and they're actually low and sinking for black households. So, in order to understand this dynamic, you need to understand that insofar as a black male is targeted, it brings down the whole community. That target brings down the whole community. And this discourse about securing women and children away from often black males, whether you're talking about a gated community or a school, or we have like a suspicious number of programs that almost incentivize people to kick black males out of their household. They get better, household privileges if they're not attached to us. Because understand that if your entire notion of public safety, and remember, my partner's out, so I'm going to be doing the tech and doing the talking. If your entire notion of public safety is based on your aspiration to live in this kind of gated community, secure and where your kids are secure, that means your aspiration is also to support this kind of gated community. And with that, I'm going to give you the opening. Take care.
To the beach,
yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
to the beach,
yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
So I want to preface this entire discussion by reminding people that from time to time, I'm considered a rapist. And that's very important. Not all the time, but I have had my moments. And I say this, the first time I actually considered, am I a rapist, was when I was about 12 years old. And this is important because this is before I'd actually had sex. So what is it about America that makes 12-year-old black men wonder if they're rapists? It's about the same time you have to understand that women are being told that everywhere is a danger and they could be a rape victim. So that means if you're making women possible rape victims and having that being such a part of their identity, then there's an opposite. There's another group that's an assailant, and having that being a part of their identity. So everywhere you see a black man, what you see is a potential rape assailant, potential sexual assault assailant. And that is the narrative that has a lot of people wondering, am I a problem? Or am I a problem yet to be activated? So this has nothing to do with actually like how I like my sex, which is, consensual and willing and not only willing, eager. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with what society needs me to be in order to justify certain budgets and certain ways of life and certain aspirations. And honestly, certain ideologies of victimhood. It's what society needs me to be. Right? So society needs me to be a public safety threat. And I will say that I am a public safety threat insofar as public safety is premised on especially black male subordination, and I'm not about that life. So insofar as our dominant political order is ordered around and casual with black male subordination, I am a public safety threat to that. To the other thing, I'm not. However, society needs me to be, and it needs to talk to me as if I am one. And that's what you get when you get Hillary Clinton, in 1996, shilling for the crime bill or Bill's re-election when she's suggesting young black men are super predators. That's what she's saying. I know, because at the time in 1996, I was a young black male. And she needed me to be a super predator. And that's a problem. So how much of our public discourse, and I say this, how much of our public safety discourse is securing people from black men as opposed to securing black men? And what happens when you change that discourse? You go from this being a ideal, because remember, if you universalize public safety as somehow distancing yourself from black men, this becomes your ideal. This is the life you want for everyone, right? A gated community, in a space without threats or people who appear to be threats, which is me. I appear very threatening. Not, but I appear that way. Or I'm not in the regular way. I'm threatening in other ways. Not in the bedroom. I like to think I'm delightful in the bedroom. But so if this is your aspiration of safety, it is inherently anti-black male. And that's a problem. Because if you look at the way violence is met out in society, I don't want to ignore the violence women face and women and children face, but if you look at the way violence is distributed out in society, for example, I'm going to put the jail figures in Athens, Clarke County here. And like I said, this is in Athens, Clarke County. This is probably in your county too. Let me move over so you can see the figures, or at least put them down so you can see my face and the figures. So yeah, Athens, Clarke County, black men are about 13% of the county and about 63% of the jail. So, the budget, the public safety budget includes the sheriff's office. A lot of that is just about controlling, surveilling, and policing black men away from, people. And public safety is understood as your distance away or your ability to increase force upon black males. And I feel like that's a problem, because if that's your ideal, who's looking out for the black males? So in order to have this kind of public safety discussion and this kind of public safety discourse, you need to exclude black men from the public and then reconstitute them in the public as only things that can be assailants. Because a real public safety discourse would look at who's getting the most amount of violence. And make no mistake, when you sick a cop on someone, you're sicking violence onto someone. When you put someone in jail, you're just exercising institutionalized violence. That person does not want to be there. So that is always violence. So who's getting whose bodies is violence in America most exercised upon? From preschool suspensions to regular school suspensions to this are jail rates. And I think, and if you look at homelessness rates, who's getting evicted, you got to look at black communities, especially black men. We just ignore that violence because we've legitimized the violence on black male bodies. So if we wanted to just get rid of violence and secure everyone, we have to look at what secures black men so that everybody gets their fair share of safety and vulnerability. Because the people who want a gated community at the expense of black men and want black men in jail, they're not looking for their fair share of security. They're looking for more, an overwhelming amount of security, no matter what, and what that means for black male life. So if you want to actually secure black male life, you need to secure, if you want to actually get serious about public safety that includes black men as part of the public, we need to not talk about police and jails. We need to talk about jobs, right? So a real public safety program includes jobs. Just like, and I know I'm not going to get away from this program without talking about LeBron's school. So let me just talk about that right now. Where's my man? All right, so LeBron opened up this school, and he's like, look, first of all, LeBron right now is doing the work of government, which is good, only insofar as it gets these 40 people what every black male should get. It's not good insofar as we can't depend on 6'8" basketball superstars to lead black community uplift, because there are 20 million black males, 40 million black people, and a handful of LeBrons. So we need our rights guaranteed by government budgets, not so much security. I mean, people like LeBron. Honestly, if I had his money, I would probably put my money and influence, form a PAC, and try to get a handful of Ohio state legislators elected who campaign on my issues and then could swing the budget, the state budget, to actually secure this quality of education and this quality of funding for all schools. However, notice the most important part of LeBron's school: free tuition's great, free uniforms is great, the helmet and bicycle is great, transportation within 2 miles, whatever, breakfast, lunch, and snacks, that's fine, food pantry for families, that's fine, GEDs, and most important, job placement services for parents. That's what makes LeBron's program noteworthy. If that happens, I don't know, but it's good that that's in the discourse, because if you want to secure educational development for black children, what you need to do is secure jobs, good jobs, for black adults and their parents, right? And the same with public safety. If you want to secure a safe public, the best means to do that is look at your most stigmatized population and guarantee them good jobs at fair wages and fair hours. It's amazing what kind of parents we become. We actually become kind of awesome people. Let me show you a little bit about black men. A lot of people don't understand that black men get these things, right? So here's, people assume that white women are more liberal or more progressive than black men, but it turns out that in terms of childcare, black men are, if black men were in charge, there would be better childcare. And I'll tell you right now, if I go to I'm picking up my daughters after this show, but when I go there, I'm going to see I go to an integrated, or my kids go to an integrated daycare. It's going to be a whole lot of black fathers picking up their kids from childcare. Black fathers and white mothers from my childcare, because like I said, it's an integrated childcare that's mostly like picking up black fathers and black mothers, and then white mothers, and then the staff is all black women. But black fathers agree with childcare. Black fathers support childcare, believe that. And there are studies for decades that have shown that black males are better in terms of sharing power and domestic labor and childcare in the household than their white counterparts. I'm just going to leave that out there. So building your public security ethic around what secures black men from the vagaries of blackness in America, which not just includes being targeted by the cops, but also includes like a hostility in the private job market, is securing them a job. So we don't have to get entirely too creative in our quest for income, right? So you secure black men a job, that will secure your public safety. If the public includes black men. Now, a lot of you guys consider the public not including black men. Black men are just constituted as threats and assailants. And I feel like that's the problem, right? Because what happens when you constitute black men as only being threats and assailants, you forget black men like this brother. Look at this good-looking brother right here. Look at this good-looking brother. You might remember him. This guy's name is John Crawford III. That's the adult right there. And his son is John Crawford IV, also called Quad, which I think is a fantastic nickname for someone named the fourth. If you have to, the fourth one's named Quad, John Crawford IV. You might remember John Crawford because John Crawford, like me, was, well, not like me. He was actually killed by the police because someone called 911 on him because he was considered a threat. All right? So you might remember John Crawford there. John Crawford was considered a threat. John Crawford would go into a cookout, went to Walmart to pick up some goods, picked up a BB gun on the shelf, was walking around with it while he's talking with his lady on the phone, and someone called the cops on him, and the cops came in, and they killed him. He was walking around with a BB gun he had picked up off of Walmart's shelf while talking with his lady on the phone, and his last words were, "Oh, this thing, it ain't real." And the cops came in and shot him. That's violence. That's a problem with public safety when you're always considered a threat. Now, understand what that means. This came out today. This is at Smith, you know, one of those hoity-toity lady schools in the Northeast. And it turns out that a black Smith college student was eating her lunch when an employee called the police on her. Now, this college student, probably on financial aid, and honestly, since it's Smith, probably African. Just saying. Was paying either financial aid or tuition for the employee's salary, who went ahead and called the police on her. I say this is a her because Smith is an all-girls school. I'm just saying that public safety concerns are not necessarily consistent with black freedom. But they don't want to be consistent with black freedom, right? And if we don't understand why it's important to move the narrative of public safety from one that excludes black males to one that includes and possibly even acknowledges their peculiar vulnerability in both the labor market and the criminal justice arena. When we don't do that, we mistake the subjects of violence or the objects of violence in the United States, right? So a lot of people will say, like, well, you know, America is a patriarchy, which means that black men aren't vulnerable. They have power. No. You misunderstand what patriarchy means, right? And so I'm going to give you a quick lesson on the difference between patriarchy and paternalism. Paternalism is when someone takes care of you because you can't take care of yourself, or you don't understood as being able to take care of yourself, so they do this for your own good. Here's an example of paternalism. Paternalism. Here you go. Right. Here's this girl. She cut class, so her mom or parents made her post a picture of her with this sign saying, "I cut class and now I'm suspended." That's paternalism. That's not patriarchy. That's paternalism. There's a difference, right? And as awful as that is, and women disproportionately get a share of this, people are overly paternal to them. They get mansplained, they get condescended to. That's paternalism. That's not patriarchy. Patriarchy is this, right? It's one of these jokey prom pictures where, patriarchy is one of these jokey prom pictures where a father comes out and shows, and points a gun at the prom date to say, well, you better take care of my daughter. Ha, 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 or I will shoot you in the chest. Now, I imagine the girl in this picture is rather embarrassed, and it's embarrassing to have your father point a gun at your prom date. I imagine that's very embarrassing. It's different, though, and I'm sure if he fired the gun and killed the prom date, you'd be very sad about it. Not like give up your inheritance and donate that inheritance to the United Negro College Fund sad, but appropriately sad. But that's what patriarchy looks like, because the fundamental target of patriarchy, and this is what people don't take seriously, the fundamental target of patriarchy isn't women. The fundamental target of patriarchy is outgroup males. I'll say this again. The fundamental target of patriarchy is outgroup males. That's why the places with the worst problems with patriarchy will be, or the worst problems with gender relations will also be the places with the worst problems with race relations. That's why the American South has both screwed up gender nations and race notions, and they're out front, right? Understand. Paternalism, patriarchy. Patriarchy is about the violent control of outgroup males primarily, and it uses in-group females in order to carry off this violence. Paternalism, that's condescending. We take care of you because you can't take care of yourself and we don't trust you. As condescending as that is, that's not violent. Right? And so when we take public safety to be a paternal concern, where we take care of people and not secure them, secure all of them, then we use paternalism in order to enact patriarchy, which includes the violent control of black males. And that's how you get these numbers in the Clark County Jail. And that's how you get this kind of gated community. So I want to remind you that, I want to remind you that if you don't support, if your idea of public safety is primarily, like, if universalized gives everyone this kind of gated community, that means what you're securing people from and what you're tacitly endorsing is this kind of gated community. And that's important, right? So what happens if you, instead of taking public safety as primarily concerned with women and children, and actually look at, where violence is meted out in society, both legitimately and illegitimately, from football all the way to, prison or, degradation and homelessness. If you just center black men, hello? What happened? Well, if you just center black men, I'm going to keep talking because you're still here. And although you don't need to see me, I'll just put this up. If you center black men, what will happen is you will get jobs. Instead of gated communities for everyone, you'll get jobs for everyone. You'll get health care for everyone. If you look at what ails black men in the United States and universalize policies based on what ails black men in the United States, everyone gets a bump and everyone gets their fair share. And nobody gets too much. Nobody's security comes at the expense of anybody else's, because when your security comes at the expense of anyone else's, what your security is coming at is at the expense of black men in the United States. That's what it's coming at. And that's the dynamic we need to adjust and look at and take seriously insofar as we do care about justice, or at least talk about caring about justice. right? We need to be honest about the violence in the United States. We need to be honest about how it's legitimized. We need to be honest about who it's legitimized against. And we need to take the aggregate violence and look at who is under the most amount of vulnerability in the United States, and then universalize policies based on sharing their vulnerability. Right? We need to universalize policies based on sharing their vulnerability. And if you universalize policies based on sharing their vulnerability, everyone wins. Right? We look at black male vulnerability, and that's a matter of joblessness and stigma in the market and the inability of the private market to absorb stigmatized populations at fair wages. We look at the logic of patriarchy. And this is patriarchy whether you're talking about Nazi Germany when they were, castrating and raping Jewish men, or the Hutus and the Tutsis, or Australia where they were doing that to Maori men, or the United States where we're doing it to Native American men. The target of patriarchy is always in-group men against out-group men, with in-group women being kind of drafted into the politics. And when you actually look at that seriously, it makes sense why 50% of white women voted for Hillary Clinton in the last election, although Donald Trump casually said he could grab women by the cooch. I feel like a fundamental misunderstanding about how this works is what gives us our situation right now. And if you want to know more about this, there's a great book by a guy named Jim Sedanis and Felicia Pratel. They're both social scientists at Jim's at Harvard, Felicia's at one of the UCs or Cal State School in California. It's called Social Dominance Theory. It explains what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. And if we're serious about addressing these numbers and the numbers I'm about to put up, racial wealth gap numbers. If we're serious about addressing these numbers, we need to look at the public safety threat to black men, and those public safety threats are joblessness, homelessness, and actually what happens if we center black men, entire black communities get better. They don't want to talk about public safety in these terms because black men, once again, will only be construed as public threats, not the victims of a horribly and violently anti-black society. So I hope you understand the arguments for why you should conceive of black men as the vulnerable population, or at least share that space of vulnerability with black women, or out-group women, because if you do, everybody does better. If you just think about women and children vaguely, then what you end up doing is securing them against black men. Whether you want to or not, that's just how it shakes out in America, and it erases black men from a public safety concern. It just makes them an object of public safety, an object to be policed and surveilled. So if we think about public safety in terms of women and children, it'll expand the carceral and surveillance state. If we think about public safety in terms of black men, what it does is we look at the challenges and the vulnerabilities of black men, which are joblessness and the quality of work conditions. You remember the Poor People's March started in '68. The run-up to it was two guys getting killed in a trash compactor, two black trashmen getting killed in a trash compactor because they were in the trash compactor to get out of the rains because their break room had been taken away, because we don't really treat black men like employees, we treat them like slaves. So if we look at the public safety concerns of black men, center them, everybody, and universalize them so that they're not just for black men, they're for everyone, then everybody gets a job. Everyone gets a job with good working conditions. Everyone gets childcare because we believe in childcare. Everyone gets these things that make the people in the United States safer and freer. If you center women and children, what you do is expand the surveillance state, because women and children honestly occupy a strange place in the labor market. So you don't get from public safety to labor if you center women and children. Because one, thank goodness, children don't work. Two, the women driving this discourse, to be honest, they're not, it's not black women who have always worked as, either primary or like large secondary benefits. It's white women who work with the assumption that their husbands are going to make more anyway. So it's usually by, somehow policing black men. Or participating in an economy that exploits black men. So you can't expect public safety of white women, or women in general, honestly, to be pro-black men. It'll be pro-surveillance and incarceration of black men. I hope this has been useful and thoughtful. And I say this as someone, a lot of people say, like, well, women are vulnerable too. But also, look, I teach at the University of Georgia, and right now we're in sorority and fraternity rush. And right now I'm watching these white women line up for the opportunity to get hooked up with Chad. Not that they're going to be jobless, but they're assuming that Chad's going to make more than them. And so that's just a different place in the labor market than a black male. Right? So the safety concerns of these women isn't economic safety, isn't economic security. Or it's not going to be economic security through the job market. It's economic security through attachment to white men. Whereas black men aren't looking for economic security through attachment to white men, through marital attachment to white men. They're looking for economic security through, their own jobs or their own businesses. So if you're worried about public safety and securing the livelihood and lives of black men, you need of the public, which includes black men, you need to look at their safety. You need to look at their livelihood. You need policies that are geared toward them, not policies that are geared towards women and children who occupy, once again, a different, especially white ones, a different part in the labor market, so that their concerns can't be universalized without disproportionately punishing black men. All right, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this show. I tried to keep it under a half hour. I think I'll have the tech working a little bit better next week. And take care. Bye.